A German shepherd was attending a funeral alongside me, a Navy SEAL. My son had died right after leaving his mother's womb. In that atmosphere of grief, suddenly my four-legged friend let out a loud bark and leapt onto the baby's casket. What happened next stunned us all. The blazing sun of San Diego poured down on the tarmac of North Island Naval Air Station. I stepped off the transport plane, my personal backpack heavy on my shoulders. My camouflage uniform was dusted with a thin layer of grime from days in the war zone. Axel, my large German shepherd, walked close beside me. The leash in my hand tightened slightly whenever Axel sniffed the familiar scent of the ocean. I reached down and patted Axel's head. "We're home, buddy. Smell the salt air? No more Middle Eastern sand." Axel cocked his ear and looked up at me. This working dog had completed 2 tours in the heart of conflict with me. Today, both of us were officially discharged. I promised Sarah, this time, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying home to watch the boy grow up. You'll be his protector, understand, Axel? I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I hit the power button. I was desperate for a text or a call from Sarah. She was in the final weeks of pregnancy. When I left 9 months ago, her belly had only just begun to swell. I had missed every ultrasound, every time the baby kicked. As soon as the phone found a signal, a barrage of notifications hit. I froze on the runway. One voice message was from my neighbor. "Jake, if you get this, get to Mercy Hospital immediately. Sarah went into early labor. The ambulance is taking her now." My heart pounded. I didn't even stop to check my luggage. I ran straight to the military parking lot, pulling Axel with me. "Hurry, Axel. Sarah needs us." My old pickup truck sped onto the freeway. I gripped the steering wheel, my eyes fixed forward. Axel sat in the passenger seat, seemingly sensing my tension. He rested his large head on my thigh, letting out a soft whimper. "I know, Axel. I'm scared too. I've faced gunfire, but my hands have never shaken like this." As I turned into the Mercy Hospital entrance, I saw an ambulance parked abruptly outside the emergency room. Medics were hastily pushing a gurney inside. On was a woman with disheveled blonde hair. "Sarah." I abandoned the truck right in the driveway and rushed out. Axel followed. I ran, chasing the gurney as it sped down the long, antiseptic-smelling corridors. "You can't enter this area, Sergeant." A nurse blocked me at the operating room doors. "That's my wife. I just got back from the airport. Let me be with her. You must wait here. The doctors are doing everything they can. She's bleeding heavily." The operating room doors slammed shut and the red light flashed on. I stood paralyzed, looking down at my uniform, then at Axel. The dog sat on the floor, his brown eyes fixed on the closed doors. I collapsed onto the cold waiting bench. I clasped my hands together, resting my forehead on them. "Remember that time we were pinned down in the valley, Axel? What did I tell you then?" Axel tilted his head, gently licking my trembling hand. "I told you if we made it back, I'd make it up to Sarah. I left her alone for too long. She had to go through all the morning sickness, all the fear watching the news about the SEALs by herself. I owe her a lifetime of peace." An hour passed, then 2. The hospital corridor was silent, broken only by the hurried footsteps of distant nurses. I couldn't take my eyes off the door. I talked to Axel to keep myself from losing my mind with worry. "The boy will look like Sarah, I bet. He'll have her blue eyes. I'll teach him how to throw a ball for you to fetch, Axel. We'll go camping in Coronado every weekend." Suddenly, a flurry of activity erupted inside the operating room. Doctors shouted, and the alarm on the monitors blared continuously. I sprang up, pressing my face against the small glass window on the door. All I could see were blurred figures in surgical scrubs rushing about. What's happening? Why are they running so much? I gripped the leash so tightly my palm turned white. Axel stood up, his ears erect, letting out low growls in his throat, like a warning of a danger. I couldn't see. "Calm down, Axel. They're saving her. They have to save her." The chaos inside abruptly subsided. A terrifying silence descended upon the space. The red light on the door went out. The door opened slowly. The lead surgeon walked out, his rubber gloves stained with dark red streaks. He pulled off his mask, revealing a drawn face and eyes full of remorse. I stepped forward, my breath ragged. "How's my wife, doctor? Where's my son?" The doctor looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm so sorry, Sergeant Riley. We did everything we could. Your wife hemorrhaged too. Severely. We couldn't stop the bleeding in time. She passed away on the operating table." My world shattered. I took a step back, leaning against the cold wall. And my son?" The doctor shook. His head gently, his voice choked. "The baby suffered from lack of oxygen due to the mother's complications. When we delivered him, his heart rate was already gone. We tried CPR for 30 minutes. But there was no response. I didn't scream. I stood there, motionless, like a statue carved from stone. All the sound around me faded. I felt like I was falling into a bottomless black hole. All the hopes, all the plans for a peaceful home that had just sparked hours ago were now dust. "Do you want to go in and see them one last time?" I didn't answer. I stumbled into the operating room. On two metal beds, placed side by side, two white sheets covered the forms. I trembled as I pulled back the sheet covering Sarah's face. She looked like she was sleeping, her face bearing a trace of fatigue, but peacefulness. I knelt beside the bed, holding her cold hand. "I'm home, Sarah. Did I come home too late?" Axel walked up, placing his front paws on the edge of Sarah's bed, letting out a soft, mournful sound. He turned toward the smaller bed next to hers, where the tiny body of my newborn child lay. Axel gently nudged the sheet covering the baby with his nose, then looked up at me with sorrowful eyes. I pressed my face against Sarah's hand, the hot tears finally falling, soaking the white bed sheet. I had seen comrades fall, faced death countless times, but this pain surpassed any endurance. I should have come home sooner. I shouldn't have gone on that mission. I spoke in broken breaths, my voice thick with grief. Axel circled me, rubbing his body against my shoulder the way he always did to comfort me after a grueling firefight. The air in the operating room was cold and smelled strongly of chemicals. I just sat there, amidst the greatest loss of my life. The strong SEAL was now just a broken man, clinging to the remnants of a dream that would never come true. Axel lay prostrate at my feet, never leaving my side, faithful and grieving with his owner through the longest night. The new day's light brought no hope. The San Diego sky was gray, heavy clouds covering the naval base. I stood in front of the mirror, in my silent house, buttoning the last button on my dress blues uniform. My hands, once steady holding a rifle, now trembled, touching the trident insignia on my chest. Axel lay prone by the bed, his eyes following my every move. I looked at my reflection, my face gaunt, my eyes red from sleeplessness. I picked up my white cap and set on the table. "We have to go, Axel. They're waiting." Axel stood up, wagging his tail slightly, but without the usual eagerness. I leaned down and stroked his back. "You must keep your discipline. Today is an important day for Sarah and the boy." I drove onto the base. Rain began to fall, the drops hitting the windshield. I parked outside the Naval Chapel. The guards stood at attention, saluting as my truck passed. I let Axel out. The chapel had long wooden pews and stained glass windows. Inside, the silence was so profound I could hear my own footsteps. On the raised platform, two white caskets rested side by side. I walked to stand between the two caskets. Sarah lay there, dressed in the pale blue silk dress she wore my last going-away party. Her face was lightly made up, looking peaceful, like she was in a deep sleep. Beside her was a smaller casket. My son was dressed in a miniature SEAL uniform, his tiny hat resting beside his hands that had never grasped anything. I reached out and touched the wooden edge of my son's casket. "I'm sorry I didn't get to meet you, son. I should have been the first to hold you." Axel walked around me. He didn't lie down as usual. He kept sniffing around the small casket. His ears were perked up, his black nose constantly twitching. "Down, Axel. Discipline." Axel didn't obey. He moved closer to the edge of the casket, letting out low whimpers in his throat. I gently tugged the leash, not wanting his restlessness to disrupt the solemnity. The chapel door opened. Miller, my closest teammate, walked in with the SEAL. "Platoon, They wore their dress uniforms, chests adorned with medals. Miller walked up to me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "We're here with you, Jake. The whole team is here." I nodded, my throat dry. "Thanks, Miller. Sarah always said you were the loudest guy on the team, but she liked you a lot." Miller looked at the 2 caskets, his eyes welling up. "She was an amazing woman. And the boy, he looks like you, Jake. Look at that forehead, a little warrior." I looked down at my son. I was going to name him Leo. I wanted him to grow up strong like a lion. But now, I don't even know his eye color. "Don't torture yourself anymore. You were serving your country." Sarah understood that. She understood, but I don't. I trade all these medals just to hear him cry. Once, Axel started circling again. He wouldn't stay in his spot. He kept moving toward the child, his brown eyes fixed on the still, tiny body. "What's wrong with Axel?" Miller asked, watching the dog. "I don't know. Maybe he feels the loss too. He's very sensitive." The other soldiers advanced one by one. They stood at attention, saluting to say goodbye to their teammate's wife and son. The sound of their polished boots on the stone floor was dry and sharp. No one spoke, only nods and firm handshakes. The chaplain stepped onto the platform. He opened the Bible, preparing to begin the service. "We are gathered here today to bid farewell to Sarah Riley and her son." I stood straight, my chin slightly raised in proper military posture. But inside, I felt like I was collapsing. The chaplain's prayers drifted past my ears. I only stared at Sarah, then at Leo. The rain outside intensified, creating a steady rhythm against the chapel roof. Axel suddenly pulled away from my leg. He moved closer to the small casket. He sniffed the tiny feet of the baby. I signaled for Axel to come back. Axel returned to position. "Lie down." This time Axel completely ignored the command. The dog nudged the side of the casket with his nose. He let out a low growl, not of anger, but of urgency. "Let him be, Jake," Miller whispered. "Working dogs have strange instincts. Maybe he's saying goodbye to the boy in his own way." I sighed, slackening the leash. I looked at Axel, then at my son. In that moment, I wished everything was just a nightmare. I wished I was on a helicopter, preparing to jump into the sea, a place of danger, but at least I knew how to fight. Here, facing death, I was completely helpless. The chaplain continued in his somber voice. "Life is a gift, and though brief, Sarah and her son have left their mark on our hearts." My chest tightened painfully. I remembered the letters Sarah sent me. She wrote about buying the new crib, choosing the color for the nursery. Everything was ready, except they weren't there to use it. "I don't know what to do next, Miller," I said quietly, still looking straight ahead. "That house is too big now. I can't look at an empty crib. You can stay at the base with us for a few days. Don't go back there alone." I have to go back. I still have to take care of Axel. He's the only thing that connects me to the day Sarah was alive. She loved Axel. Axel suddenly stood still. He stopped circling. The dog rested his head on the edge of the baby's casket. His eyes narrowed as if observing something intensely. His ears swiveled slightly, focusing on Leo's tiny chest. The silence in the chapel became heavy. Dozens of seals stood there, like stone statues. The scent of fresh flowers mixed with burning wax created a melancholic atmosphere. I saw a drop of water fall onto my son's cheek. I reached out to wipe it away, realizing it was rain from my own sleeve. The baby's skin was pale and cold. I gently touched his tiny lips. "Sleep tight, my little warrior." The chaplain closed his Bible. He looked at me with sympathy and stepped back, yielding to the funeral home staff preparing for the final rite. It is time to escort them to their final resting place. I stood rooted to the spot. My hands were clenched until they were white. I looked at the 2 caskets one last time. A thought flashed through my mind. When those wooden lids close, I will truly be alone. Miller stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder, ready to guide me away. Just then, Axel suddenly yanked hard on the leash. The violent, abrupt tug threw me off balance, and the leash slipped from my grasp. Axel didn't run for the door. The dog leapt onto the high platform, his front paws bracing against the edge of Leo's small casket. Axel began to bark. The barks came in rapid, urgent succession. He turned his head to look at me, then back at the baby, his tail vigorously slapping the wooden side. "Axel, get down now. What are you doing?" I rushed forward to pull the dog away. Two other SEALs moved to assist. The solemnity of the service was utterly shattered. Attendees murmured. Some women gasped in alarm. "Stop! Don't touch him!" I suddenly yelled. I froze when I saw that Axel showed no sign of aggression. The dog wasn't baring his teeth or growling. He was barking with a frantic urgency, the way he would when locating a trapped comrade beneath rubble in the war zone. The chaplain was distraught. "Sergeant Riley, you must remove the dog. This is sacred ground." I didn't look at the chaplain. My eyes were fixed on Axel's actions. The dog suddenly lowered himself. He skillfully climbed right into the small casket, where there wasn't much space. Axel lay down flat, using his entire large, furry, warm body to cover Leo's chest and abdomen. "Look, Miller, he's not damaging anything." Miller stood stunned. "What is he doing, Jake?" "The boy is gone." "I don't know, but Axel has never been wrong when he scented life. You see something, don't you, Axel? Tell me." Axel lay still. He closed his eyes, his breathing heavy and quick. He pressed his warm fur against the baby's pale skin. Every now and then, he would nudge the baby's neck with his nose, then lick his cold cheeks. The entire chapel fell into an eerie silence. The murmuring stopped. People stood, holding their breath, watching the four-legged creature attempting something insane. The smell of dog fur mixed with the scent of roses created a poignant, overwhelming atmosphere. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes passed. I stood right next to the casket, sweat running down my forehead despite the cold rain outside. "The doctor said the boy has been gone for 18 hours, Jake. Don't hope too much only to be hurt again." Miller whispered, his hand resting on his sidearm out of habit. "I know what the doctor said, but I know Axel too. He saved me in the Karangal Valley when everyone thought I was dead. He never gives up." I leaned down, speaking to my son, lying beneath Axel's body. "Leo, if you can hear your father, you have to try. Axel is helping you. Don't leave your dad alone." Suddenly, Axel let out one final loud bark and jumped out of the casket. The dog stood on the floor, his tail wagging frantically, his eyes glued to the baby. A tiny finger on Leo's hand twitched. I rubbed my eyes. I thought I was hallucinating from exhaustion. But then, the baby's chest rose strongly. A shiver ran through the tiny body. "Look, the baby moved." A woman in the front pew cried out. A faint cry emerged. At first, it was a small whimper, but then it grew stronger, turning into a powerful, vital wail. The cry shattered the air of mourning, echoing throughout the corners of the Naval Chapel. I lunged forward. I lifted my son out of the casket. The baby was now pinker, the warmth from Axel still lingering on his miniature SEAL uniform. Little Leo sobbed uncontrollably, his hands flailing in the air. "My son is alive. He's alive." I hugged him tight, tears streaming down my face, soaking my formal uniform. I dropped to my knees, one arm holding my son, the other pulling Axel close. "Thank you, Axel. Thank you for bringing him back." Axel licked my forehead, then licked Leo's tiny hand. The dog let out sounds of pure, happy relief. The entire chapel erupted. The usually stoic SEALs were hugging each other, many openly weeping. Miller rushed over, touching the baby's leg, still unable to believe his eyes. "Unbelievable. This is a miracle. A genuine miracle, Jake." The chaplain made the sign of the cross, murmuring words of thanks. He walked over to me, placing his hand on the child's head. "God sent a four-legged angel to help you. This is the most extraordinary thing I have ever witnessed in my ministry." The medics waiting outside quickly rushed in with emergency gear. They checked Leo's heart rate and breathing with utter astonishment. Heart rate is stable. Body temperature is rising. "We need to get him to the hospital for intensive monitoring immediately." I stood up, refusing to let go of my son. "I'm going with him. Axel goes too." "But Sergeant, hospital rules." "Forget the rules, doctor. If it weren't for this dog, my son would be buried right now. Where he goes, Axel goes." The ambulance sped away from the base with sirens blaring, but this time it wasn't the urgency of despair. I sat in the back, one hand securing Leo's bassinet, the other resting on Axel's head at my feet. "You see that, Axel? We're going home. The three of us." I looked out the window. The rain had stopped, and a few weak rays of sun pierced the gray clouds. I glanced at the hearse carrying Sarah's coffin, slowing down behind us to turn toward the cemetery. "Sarah, do you see? Our son is alive. I will raise him well. I promise." Miller sat in the passenger seat, turning to look at me. "What are you going to name him? Still Leo?" I looked at my son, who had fallen asleep after his long cry, then at the German shepherd guarding him. "His name is Leo, but his middle name will be Axel. Leo Axel Riley. So he never forgets who saved his life today." Axel gently pricked his ears when he heard his name. The dog rested his chin on my leg, his kind brown eyes watching the child. At the hospital, the doctors could only hypothesize that the child had been in a deep state of clinical death, and the stable warmth and sustained physical stimulation from Axel had successfully shocked his heart and lungs back into action. But for me and my SEAL teammates, it wasn't just medicine. It was camaraderie, the invisible bond between a soldier and his K9, even if that comrade had just been born. I walked out into the hospital corridor, looking down at the courtyard where Axel was being fed and petted by my teammates. "Buddy, you just completed the most important mission of your career." I returned to Leo's room, where he lay in the incubator. The baby stirred faintly. I knew the road ahead would be difficult without Sarah, but I was no longer afraid. I had a warrior son, and I had the most faithful, four-legged comrade in the world. "Welcome to the world, Leo Axel." A bark echoed from the courtyard below, like a response. The miracle had manifested, not from the distant heavens, but from the warm heart of a K9 who refused to abandon his comrade, even one who was barely hours old. The story of that funeral day would be told forever on the San Diego Naval Base. A SEAL, a resurrected baby, and a German shepherd who snatched life back from the jaws of death. Amidst loss and grief, hope had bloomed from the warmth of unconditional love.